Brilliant. Rightio. I kind of get the impression that I'm sort of here as the resident grumpy old man, which I'm sort of happy to be, and a few grey hairs gives you that privilege. Think back to, my family is from the Netherlands. A number of my extended family, my uncles and aunties, my oms and tantas, have been living in rented accommodation all of their lives and think nothing of it. It's part of the fabric of housing and housing supply in the Netherlands and throughout Europe. But if I started talking, let's say even 20 years ago, around this idea that we could have build to rent in New Zealand, it would have been unusual. It would have been unheard of. Fast forward some 20 or 30 years since I first went back and visited my family in the Netherlands, it is here and it is growing. So I'm really excited to be able to firstly introduce you to Paula Bennett. When I first got the notes, Paula, yours was a bio that ran to like half a page, which I figure is understandable given a parliamentary career of some 15 years, including, of course, being Deputy Prime Minister. Paula Bennett is known to a number of you with, at that time, a whole range of portfolios: finance, state services, social housing, police, local government, tourism, and Minister for Climate Change as well. So currently Director of Strategic Advisory at Bayleys Commercial. We thank Bayleys for their support for this event as well, and of course appointed recently as the new chair of Pharmac as well. So congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, Paula Bennett.
Thank you. Oh, I'm wired. Thanks, Peter. I am excited. I'm also on the board of NZGBC, so that is an absolute thrill, and to see my fellow board members, Chair Andrew, CE Andrew. It is great to be here and to talk about build to rent. So I'm going to facilitate this. It's something I feel passionate about as an ex-MP for Hobsonville Point. I've seen us living in different ways and really progressing as a country as to how we do that. But the good news is that I've been smart enough, or GBC has been smart enough, to give us some real experts that can come and have a chat with you and talk you through that. Can I please welcome Linda Trainer from Kiwi Property up to the stage, please. Let's give her a big round of applause. You need some energy in this room. Linda is the General Manager for Asset Management, and she'll talk a bit more about what she's doing. I've got Roy Thompson, who is the Managing Director of New Ground Capital. Roy, come on up. And of course, the wonderful Sam Stubbs from Simplicity. But man, we're not going to take up too much time with it, but if you go and look in the bios and that wonderful app that they've done, then it's kind of mind-boggling, the experience and the expertise that we've got in these three panel members. I thought we'd have a little bit more conversational this afternoon. It's been a big day, right? A fantastic day, a lot of information, some fantastic people really talking us through some pretty technical stuff as well. I'm sure we'll have touches of that because we've got such a level of expertise in the panel. But I also think that we can be a bit more conversational. If you've got questions that you'd like to send through, even as they're speaking, and if they're relevant, I can ask them at that point if it adds to the point or it's something, because sometimes actually doing the Q&A at the end, there's something specific that you kind of wish that someone expanded on. So flick that through and I'll do my best to have a look at that as well. Look, if you're a bit bored, you want some other advice, we're here. Personal hygiene. Sam can, overheating. Some of you didn't hear that earlier, but when I said overheating, I thought, well, I'm an expert. It's called menopause. But Sam can talk to you about where to get a good haircut. Couldn't you, Sam? Anything could happen. But no, what I'm saying is let's make it a little bit lighter, let's have a little bit more fun, and let's talk about something that I think is something that's absolutely vital for the future. I think we should just, I've got lots that I can say, but I think we should just kind of cut to it, and we're going to start with you, Sam, which is kind of what is BTR, and what are the opportunities, do you think, here in New Zealand?
Well, look, we have a massive amount of BTR in New Zealand. It just happens to be called investment properties owned by individuals, right? But BTR in the modern sense, and let's call it the European and North American sense, is we're institutional owners of property like ourselves, Kiwi Saver Funds, own a lot of homes and rent them for the long term. In fact, in many cases, rent them for life. it is not unusual if I was a German pension fund, for example, we would have about 10% of our investments in BTR, and we would rent those homes forever. And because it's what we call getting close to the cash, right? Who doesn't pay their mortgage or rent here, right? And because you pay the rent, it's very reliable cash flow. And because it's very reliable cash flow, it's a very reliable investment. And that's why they invest so much money in it. When you get it right, it's a fantastic investment for a pension fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, then, Linda, talk to me following that from perhaps more of a consumer's or a renter's perspective. Why might BTR be attractive as opposed to mum and dad investor who's got the one property that they rent out?
Okay, so from a build-to-rent perspective, from a customer's perspective, if you think about it, as Sam was saying, there is a hell of a lot of uncertainty as a renter. Like, are you going to be able to be there in a year's time, 2 years' time? What's the rent going to look like? What's my environment going to look like? So just from our perspective at Kiwi Property, we've just opened what we believe is the largest build-to-rent complex. It's opposite Sylvia Park, 295 apartments. And so that from a consumer's perspective, you can go into a build-to-rent complex. It's brand new, your whiteware's included, and you have a huge range of amenity, which is actually really hard to get in other locations. So, for example, build-to-rent, and it ranges depending on the provider who's actually doing the development. But for our build-to-rent, we've actually got this massive complex, and if I can maybe ask to bring up a slide. Sorry, get the pitch in early, but why not?
No, go for it. Love it.
So next one, please. So this is our what we call Resido. So Resido is a Kiwi Property build-to-rent brand, and it opened last week. We have residents moving in from tomorrow. So imagine this, if you will. You can rent at Resido. You can have up to 10 years or more if you want to. We're not going to throw you out as long as you pay your rent, like Sam says. We have this massive pavilion, which you can see down here, the one with the sort of angled roof. That's over 1,000 square metres of space. And in there is a 24-hour gym that's free. There's a media room. There's co-working space. You can rent it out if you want to have a party or two. There's also a rooftop area, which is at the top there. And you can bring your pets. You can paint the colour of the walls, whatever you want. So it really enables you, build to rent enables you to actually have a place that you can call home, and you have certainty that it is going to be your home. And the only other thing, sorry, excuse me if you don't mind.
Well, no, I want to ask who's moving in. You know, is it couples, is it families, is it older people?
It's actually a real mixture. The research we did at the time is pretty much true at the moment. So what we're seeing is a third. We're seeing about a third of people around about sort of young professionals, people who are moving in together the first time. So it's about a third of those sort of young professional couples. A third of them are people who maybe have come from overseas, people who maybe their circumstances have changed, they're going through a divorce, for example, and don't want somewhere to go. And another third that's emerging is actually people who want to cash up and go somewhere safe and modern and really feel like it's a home. So it could be retirees, could be people who have got a really expensive home and say, okay, I don't need that much money in a home anymore. I can go and hang out in a really cool place, be there as long as I like, and free up that money and go travelling. How cool would that be?
Yeah, very cool. Sam, from your perspective, and then I'm going to get a bit more to rating tools and that sort of thing with you, Roy, but from your perspective, is there a certain size or number of facilities, if you like, and units that are needed to make it financially viable for an investment?
Yeah, well, the dirty secret of BTR is it doesn't work financially, it doesn't work in New Zealand, and that's why there's only 3 of us that are doing it in any scale. And the reason it doesn't work is because it needs scale. Yeah. So our minimum development is 51 homes. Our maximum is 320. In fact, we're delighted that Kiwi have built 295 apartments. Down the road, we're building 297. But you need scale, and that is the tyranny of the New Zealand building market. That's why we're the least affordable housing market in the world. Everything is bespoke, everything is small scale. And so that's the key. You have to, and with limited exception, you have to control an awful lot of the process as well. I think Simplicity Living is probably the only one that we buy the land, do the master development, own the construction company, rent it, manage the properties ourselves. So get rid of that philo pastry of fees.
Where?
Where? Oh, well, we've got 6 different sites in Auckland, 3 open and 3 under development. And, we've spent 155 million so far, but we intend to spend about 6 billion, and our long-term plan is 10,000 homes. To give you an idea, by the way, all of the consultants and architects out there, you've got to get really serious about BTR, because if the KiwiSaver will be 400 billion by 2050, if 10% of that is in BTR, that's 40 billion. 40 billion is, let me add that up, that's about 80,000 homes. So it's going to be a very, very serious, but that's about as many homes as the state owns now. Paula, you might know that more. But the state owns about 80,000 homes right now. Yeah, about 80, so BTR will be as big as the state by 2050. There's a massive growth story. So all stay in your jobs, okay? Nobody leave, right? We all need you. Yeah.
And how important is location of the build? From your perspective, of course, you've got wonderful facilities all around you, but how important, how much do you look at that as far as its rentability, if you like?
Oh, it's massive, right? Because think about it, we're owning these things for 100 years, right? And as a non-profit, we really are. So we think about 100 years. So what do you think about in 100 years? Well, we're all obsessed with growth of cities. Actually, after about 2080, Auckland's population will start shrinking. In fact, there's a 25% chance by 2045 that's happening. So from our point of view, greenfields is crazy. You might want to build and sell, but you certainly don't want to build and own, because if you look at Seoul and Tokyo, the 2 cities in the world that have started shrinking, people are retreating to the centre, right? So you definitely want to own, and you want to own close to transport hubs. By the way, speaking of ecology, it's not what you build it of. If you don't mind me saying, I think there's an obsession in your industry about what we build. It's where you build and how you build that minimises the carbon footprint. So getting close to public transport and running this with waste minimisation and a process, not whether you use concrete or wood. That's a side debate.
I think it's
a side issue.
And how.
What was
how,
that?
sorry, and how, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Where and how, yeah. Totally.
Well, I'm going to segue to you now, Roy, exactly on that. So talking design, marketing, and the reporting of your developments, let's talk a bit more about energy efficiency, low carbon, what's important, pick up on what Sam was saying, what's your experience and what might the audience be interested in?
Sure. Hayley, we might just go on to that slide if that's all right as well. And just by the way, while I'm waiting for the slide, Sam loves to say...
Yeah, sorry.
Sam loves to say to these conferences that build to rent doesn't work. I think that's his cunning plan so that it remains just 3 of us. Build to rent absolutely works. It's not easy, but it does work. So look, just to talk to one example, getting into the ESG sustainability aspects a little bit. This is a project that we delivered for our client Hapai Housing in Glen Innes last year. It's 50 affordable and open market rental units on 5,000 square metres in Lion Road, designed by Construct and built by Mike Greer Commercial. We were very proud actually to get this certified Homestar 7 and 8 under the V4 rules, but nevertheless very proud, and we're starting to see the results of this come through, because we're interested in it not only from the perspective of the asset owner, the landlord, the investor, but also from the tenant. So in this development now, our tenants are experiencing monthly utility bills, or certainly electricity bills, about $80 a month lower than they would otherwise pay. And we as an asset owner are seeing reductions in water consumption and electricity overall of about 40% as a result of the good work that's been done here in the design and construction. So that, I don't know if that answers your question,
no,
but
it really does.
Gives you some examples.
Really, what I did, and any and all of you, is I'm interested in if you're building differently because you're going to own the asset for a very long time. So often when we're building a new house, we're thinking, well, we might think we're going to be in it for our lifetime, but most of us don't. And so we're building quite differently. And if you're a developer for that, you're building, you're not going to own the asset, right? So you're building it to sell on. These are assets that you intend to keep for decades, I imagine.
Well, it makes for an entirely different discussion with architects, because architects are often under a lot of pressure from build to sell developers to sort of cut corners, be a little bit efficient. I'm not going to say as long as it looks good, but for us, it's an entirely different set of drivers. We're going to be paying those maintenance bills. So in this example here, in Lion Road, it's all brick. That's there for a reason. Most of our developments are brick. I think a lot of yours are, Sam, as well. And that goes to the inside as well. You know, it's any kind of durability that we can build in. It's normally good for our residents, and it's good for us as asset owners.
Can I just jump in
Yeah,
as well?
please.
So, because Kiwi Property, obviously, you may know us because we are a New Zealand company. We have a number of shopping centres, including Sylvia Park, which we own, but we have a number of retail centres throughout the country. So it comes back to your purpose. You know, what are you actually trying to do with your BTR development? For us, we are slightly different in that we're fortunate that our philosophy and our business purpose is about creating a connected community. Now, what that actually means is that we are all about the long term, and we are all about creating what we call a 10-minute city. So if you have a look at Sylvia Park now, I don't know if you've been there recently, but if you compare to where it was 10 years ago, it's vastly different. It used to be a small shopping centre, now it's the largest shopping centre in New Zealand. There's 2 office towers that you just can't miss. We've now got the 295 apartment block as well, so which was 240 million to build. And coming back to Sam's point, which is a really valid one, it's about the connectivity to the transport nodes, to the motorway. So we're all about the long term and actually creating an environment where you can actually live, you can work, you can play, you can shop, you can do all of that. And hey, isn't that a great sustainability story? Because you don't have to go very far. It's right on your doorstep.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, so do you think New Zealanders are ready to move past the quarter-acre dream kind of thing? You know, we sort of, even that sort of detached, and, you know, we sort of all think that it's going to be a standalone house. This might be a step towards it. You know, you can see the development. I'm in West Auckland, and man, you can see them going up. But I wonder what their longer-term sustainability is when they're built to sell. You know, what do you think about the New Zealand psyche on a BTR?
Yeah, look, we're going to have to. It's not whether we like it, we're going to have to, because in the OECD, 42% of people live in apartments. In New Zealand, it's 4%. We're just way out of sync. And also, in New Zealand, 90% of our household wealth is in homes, property. In the OECD, the average is 50%. So you want to work out why nurses are going over to Aussie right now? Nurses are going over to Aussie because they're not getting paid enough. They're not getting paid enough because the tax revenue doesn't support them getting higher wages. The reason the tax revenue is so low is because we're an unproductive economy. Our GDP isn't high enough. Why isn't our GDP high enough? Because we spend too much money on houses and too little money in business and productivity and actually getting the wealth up. So we've got to get out of this love affair with owning homes. I'm not anti it. I own my own myself. But we've got to stop thinking about the only way you make money and save money is buying your own home and buying an investment property. You know, so renting for the long term, and I understand why people haven't wanted to, because, you know, one of the reasons Simplicity got so involved in this is I met a family, Pacifica family, who had moved 8 times in 9 years because the house had been sold. And the kids had moved school 4 times in 9 years. Any of you parents will know kids moving school is traumatic, right? So we have got to create certainty. And in Europe, if you're in Germany, you know, there are plenty of people who've rented multi-generationally. They live in the same rented apartment that their grandparents lived in. And they don't even think about ownership. It just doesn't occur to them because they have rights, yeah? So, you know, we're looking towards now things like, could we offer right of occupation in a rental format? Could you actually have a right to be there for the rest of your life, even though you're paying rent? You know, things like, all of these things are possible. There's nothing new. We just have to bring it. It's not a new idea. It's just new to New Zealand. So as long as we have the idea of security, which is what BTR offers, housing security, then you start to remove a whole lot of issues. Like, you know, like I remember crying with our first village we opened. We had an 80 and 82-year-old couple, and I get to say the 2 most beautiful words to them: "You're safe. You can be here for the rest of your lives now. You're safe." And that's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, also, the proof is in the pudding. We've had our first build-to-rent developments delivered in Hobsonville Point 2018, in your old electorate. We've had 0 vacancy.
Really? Wow.
There's overwhelming demand in this market for good quality, safe, secure, healthy housing with security of tenure. And that's the reality right across the market. And that applies not only in Auckland. we're seeing it pretty much wherever we're looking around the country. And to Sam's point, a South Auckland educator told me a little while ago, the average South Auckland school leaver has been to 6 schools during their time in the education system, driven mainly because the parents have been forced to move through lack of security of rentals. And that's really what we're changing. We're seeing now people moving for the 3rd time, but within our portfolio. So they're moving because they're driving it, not us. Their circumstances are changing. Maybe they're having additional children or becoming empty nesters. That's the way it should be. Not the landlord driving them, moving. Actually, the tenant saying, we're ready for a change. Where can we go that's within your portfolio?
Yeah.
Just add one more thing. From an Auckland perspective, about 50% of people over the age of 15 in Auckland rent. Give it another 20 years, it's going to be over 60. So this is it's not just coming at it, it's here. And we have a real need to address the need for the population to have good rental accommodation. And what Sam was saying is absolutely right. People just want security. They want somewhere they can call home, they can put down roots and have certainty. It's really huge. That's what BTR does.
And let's be honest, Paula, you don't mind me throwing a hand grenade into the room?
No, love it. We need it for the afternoon.
Go and look at retirement village margins. Why can you drive a bus through them? Because they offer security and nothing else has. So you either own your home or you own a retirement village unit and there's nothing else, right? Right down to short-term letting. So if we get more BTR in here, that'll be another option. And I think the retirement village has got to have a serious think about their business model. And by the way, we own a lot of shares in them, so we own them as well. But they've got to have a serious think about their long-term viability of the business model. Because as soon as we start building, imagine if we offered build to rent, right of occupation, you just pay the rent, no other money down. Right? That suddenly becomes a viable option. Well, and also, if we build 300 units, we'll stick a GP in the ground floor. You'll have a bit of medical there as well. We'll give them free rent because we can charge another couple of dollars a week because they get the peace of mind of knowing that there's a medical facility. So all of this, getting this, by the way, all of you are investing in KiwiSaver, you're helping make this happen, so please do more of it, okay? Because when this happens, we start get disruptive business models in and we get the housing options. There's no right or wrong here, it's just options, and this is another option.
Well, Sam from the audience, I think you just answered his question because he asked, will you challenge the retirement sector?
Well, disrupt it maybe, yeah.
Yeah, because there's room in it. Hey, I'm someone that before the age of 30, I'd moved 19 times. I once counted up, and it took me kind of that long to get there. And there is, and certainly my interest in BTR really came from being social housing minister and just that uncertainty, as you say, and the difference that it can make socially. But equally, I was thinking it can save you some money, can't it? Because you can be building assets elsewhere, but equally, I can throw away that gym membership if I move in, can't I? For me, the other thing that I found really attractive when I started looking at it, and, now I've got a handyman, my husband, but I didn't for years, and in that respect, everything you wanted to do was really time-consuming and expensive, right? The oven breaks down, I'm stuffed. I mean, I remember going out without an oven for 3 months. And as much because I couldn't afford it, and then I couldn't get the effort to actually make it all happen, and I wasn't capable of making the decision at that time, and all the rest of it. There is something really attractive about my landlord caring about their asset. Genuinely, you'll have people on site, I imagine, if you're close to 300. And I can have my needs taken care of really quickly. Yeah,
I mean, that's absolutely the case, and that's what we're seeing. People do want to have more of a carefree lifestyle, that they are controlling it. They're not held to a mortgage. They're not sort of going week to week trying to find the money to feed the kids or themselves, and they're making a conscious decision to go into a build to rent accommodation because it actually frees up cash, enables them to have a better lifestyle. And that's just not people who are in the retirement age. We are seeing people younger than that, so in their 20s, who are saying, actually, you know what, I don't even want to own a house going forward. I'm actually really happy just having a great life and enjoying my life. One of the things you touched on before about the types of the customer segments who want to go into build to rent, if you think about it, there is actually a gap between people who are, let's say, in their 50s to early 60s, late 60s, they don't want to go into a retirement village.
No.
They want to go out and have fun. So how can they release that capital, go out and have fun and have that lifestyle? That's why Build to Rent does that, because it actually enables them to still have that home. So we've got to get our mindset around the fact that renting is bad. It's not. There's some super smart people who've thought about this, and they're having a great life, and they've got people who are looking after them, maintenance guys that go and sort out the issues, and they're just enjoying themselves.
Well, I had some questions, but I've lost them. Okay, how's technology? No, but it is. Oh, there it is. That is quite interesting, and that from that perspective as well as some that I was reading about in overseas, in that you can get your Wi-Fi cheaper because you can buy them in bulk and almost rent it out to them. You can get electricity cheaper, A, because of the way that you've built them, but equally because you could look at that sort of bulk. Is that something that you're looking at?
Residents in Maroki here have a fully bundled utility package, so they don't have to turn up and then start connecting everything. It's all on when they walk in. It's charged in one monthly bill. It's charged at wholesale rates that we arrange for them, and they're obviously benefiting financially through that. They get a year's free internet, as an example, as part of the package.
What's parking like?
They get a park
Leah
each.
wants to know.
They get a park each if they want to pay for it. Yep.
No, that's good. I've got so many great questions here. Thanks for that, Jen. I really do. So I want to know, right, so BTR gives you an amazing opportunity to do post-occupancy evaluation, environmental monitoring to see whether your methodology is actually resulting in healthy, low-energy homes. They want to know, Sam, are you doing this? You talked about it, Roy. Are we seeing it in your buildings and in what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. Although I would say this, and this is where the consultants community have an enormous value to add, is that from our point of view, most projects are de-risked about 99% before we even go on site. If you spend an awful lot of time on design and production efficiency, we basically consider a project almost over before we start building it. It's so de-risked. So yeah, like you can go afterwards and prove the fact, and you use that to create a feedback loop over time. But this is Kaizen, right? This takes decades. We try to get 1 or 2% efficiency out of every development we do, but only 1 or 2. We're not trying to do anything revolutionary. It's evolutionary. And over time, you get that feedback loop. And that means that we can build, look, our newest development is opening tomorrow in Mount Albert, 51 homes. It was built in 12 months, so 12 months from the time we first stepped on site. It was built for $2,500 a square metre, so about 30 to 35% cheaper than the market, and its design life is 150 years, 3 times the building code, because we intend to own it for that long. So you can do faster, better and cheaper, but it's taken us 900 homes via NZ Living and Simplicity Living to get to that point, but you can do it. By the way, Paula, not a single new technology in there. We don't put anything in there that hasn't been tested for at least 100 years. So they're only made out of brick, concrete, steel and glass. That's it. Nothing else. And you just build it very efficiently.
Okay, BTR is a great step forward for Kiwis, but it's still one step short of ownership. If we agree that home ownership is a major source of wealth for most Kiwis, how do Kiwis who are renting build wealth for retirement?
Well, renting is cheaper than owning at the moment, according to The Economist. Maybe Shamabeel will talk about that. But I think, for a lot of people, this is not about one is better than the other. The way I always look at it is home ownership is a nice to have, actually. It's a very nice to have. And it's something that we should all, I guess, aspire to for all the obvious reasons. But first and foremost, as I think lady from Ngāti Whātua mentioned earlier on, housing is shelter. And a lot of people in New Zealand don't have the right sort of shelter. They don't have shelter that's healthy. They don't have shelter that's secure. And that's what Build to Rent is all about at the most basic level, providing people with dignity, with security, with a healthy environment, and with security of tenure. And if we can achieve that for, as Linda said, the 50% of people that live, for instance, in this city and rent today, that's got to be a good starting point.
Can I ask, and there's a few questions kind of like it, so I'll paraphrase, but do you have an agreement with your tenants as to what the rent increases at a maximum might be over the years? What's their risk in making it their home and then not having, and then being, I mean, they're at risk now, I understand that landlords can raise it anywhere, but do you have a different model in the contracts that you're doing?
I think there's a couple of options for build-to-rent developers. You can either have a fixed rent model, so you might say, I want to sign up for 5 years, 6 years, and there might be an agreed increase per annum. That's really at the choice of the renter or the developer. So you can do that, and there are definitely people who do that. There also are developments that are just purely, you get a 12 months or 2 years and then you go to market. So it's a little bit of both, to be honest. It depends on how long you want to be and the security that you're looking for as to how that is structured.
Okay, that makes sense. We may as well get to it, and there's a few, we're sort of talking about greenfield development and how, Sam, you said it was a bit crazy, but the government's approach to opening up, 30-year supply, which we heard this morning. I suppose I'm going to take that and a step further and kind of say, what do you believe that central government should be doing to help increase the supply of BTR? And why don't I start with you, Roy? Go on, take the lead. Don't tell me you haven't thought about that.
No, thought plenty about that. Look, there's some obvious things, I guess. One of the things that we always harp on about is levelling the playing field with build-to-sell developers at the development stage in respect to GST. We're at a disadvantage. It's an easy fix, actually, without changing too much or even going against basic tax principles. So that's one thing. The OIA is another very obvious one that I think steps are being made to remedy. And that's so important for liquidity reasons. I think a lot of institutional investors in New Zealand are hesitant about build-to-rent because there's so little liquidity in the market. So we need those big overseas investors to come in, those investors who've been doing this for decades in the build-to-rent or multifamily sectors overseas, and inject that much needed liquidity into the local market here in order to give local investors confidence. But actually then I think it really, to a large extent, it comes down to probably those of us on the stage here to demonstrate to local investors that actually this is a viable and profitable way to invest capital. It's by far and away the biggest capital market in New Zealand. It's 10 times the size of our Runty equity market, and it's very liquid. So it's a very natural investment actually for our institutional investors. It's just culturally we don't see it as an institutional investment asset class. It's seen as a mum and dad investment, and that's something that has to change over time if we're really to get serious capital into the sector.
Either of you got thoughts on what government needs to do to support further growth?
Oh, look, I think Roy is the font of all wisdom on this. You've been thinking about it the longest. I think that GST is a really big deal, eh? Like if GST was off, I mean, I think understand for student accommodation, it's already, right, so there's already a precedent. If you're building student accommodations, don't pay GST.
Retirement.
And retirement, right.
Yeah.
So if we didn't pay GST, the building cost would be 15% lower. At that point, I think rather than being the only KiwiSaver manager who's doing BTR, I think we'd have 5 or 6 competitors within a year or two. And then we're starting to get some serious grunt. Because even in the absence of the offshore buyers, remember, KiwiSaver's like a rising tide of prosperity, right? It's gone from nothing to 110 billion. By the way, if you have kids or grandkids, could you please tell them that they are incredibly lucky to have been born now, right? They lucked out entirely because New Zealand's where Australia was in about 1985. There's a rising tide of prosperity arriving. I know things look really grim right now, but in my seat, for simplicity, we have $5 million every day coming in, new money, your savings, to invest. And we have to invest it. We've never sold anything, never been a net seller in 8 years. So there's more money coming in, it will find its way in. I think is GST the biggest? Would that, if there was one bullet to fire, would it be that?
The Overseas Investment Act is pretty big too. We definitely need to unlock that channel.
No, we're Kiwi owned. I don't want those filthy foreigners bringing their money in.
A few people have asked and liked Michael's question, which is places like Wynyard Quarter have amazing public space amenity but are super expensive to live. Could you theoretically make build to rent viable in high value locations like this?
I'm just going to jump in for a moment because I think that's what we've actually delivered at Sylvia Park, because there's a lot of amenity there. We didn't have to do it. The pavilion that I showed you earlier, it's 1,000 square metres of space. There's the gym and the co-working, all that costs money. You absolutely can put the amenity in if you are, to Sam's point again, if you're looking for the long term. This is not a quick fix, get in, make a buck, get out. This is actually about investing in people's future on the long term. And I think if you look at it through that lens and you think about how would I want to live, and that was the message we gave to our team was, you need to be able to walk into these apartments, you need to walk into Resido and go, could I live here? And if you could, then we've done a good job and we push ourselves a bit further. I think that's a real cultural shift that we have to push ourselves. And just adding on to that last topic as well, one thing I would just stress is that build to rent seems really new to us because we haven't heard a lot about it probably for the last 18 months. This is the strongest asset class growth overseas. It's all in the UK, it's all in the US, it's going absolutely nuts in Australia. So I guess my advice would be let's just try and open some eyes to what's actually possible.
Paula, let me just give you an example. We're going to build a 360 home development in Ellerslie Racecourse, on Ellerslie Racecourse, right? So I'm a kid from Sunnyvale, West Auckland. You have no idea how happy it makes me to provide houses for nurses, cops and teachers. They get to say they have a Remuera postal address, right? So it's possible. But let me tell you what that does. Let me give you an example. One of those buildings is we're building right next to the Mercy Ascot Hospital. Retirement villages operators beware. They'll have a whole hospital next to them. And they came to us and they said, hey, listen, you're building here. We have a whole lot of nurses' aides and cleaners who are commuting down to Drury because it's the only place they can afford to live. Their commute is 90 minutes by bus. If you would rent us a building or have our staff rent there, their commute will be 90 seconds by foot. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Now that's in Remuera, right? So if it's possible for us to do it in Remuera, it's possible to do this in high value. Here's the big fallacy. By the way, I'm new to the property game. I've only been doing this for a couple of years. I'm a numbers guy. One thing I've discovered about building is there is this fallacy that there's not enough land. It's rubbish. There's heaps of land. There's just a lack of money to develop it. It's the shortage of money and the wherewithal and the construction. It's not the land. Simplicity Living in 2 years has bought as much land. Well, in fact, we just, there's tons of land to buy. You just need the money to buy it with.
Got lots of kind of similar questions around energy and how that works. So, kind of BDR and high performance go hand in hand as a more durable investment, less reliance on tenants opening windows. You can also wrap in the bills as the energy use is so much lower. You can centralise heating. Do you include this? I'm just going to give it 2 or 3 so that you can answer them all at once. Are you looking at neighbourhood or centralised heating, cooling, power? How are you doing low carbon, low impact and BTR? Now I know you've said some of that, but obviously there's a lot of interest still in the room on those.
Yeah, maybe one example would be in the Glen Innes case. We built in there centralised hot water heating. So there's 2 plants, heat the hot water for the whole development. It's on a circulating ring main system, so more or less instant hot water for people. It's supplemented by PVs on the roof, providing solar energy. So that's, I think, a pretty concrete and easy example, really. It's a better experience because it's instant hot water. People aren't running their water for a long time, wasting water. We're able to use our roofs as an energy source. It's kind of win-win-win for everybody, really.
And it is a win-win because people have asked sort of in here as well as, if you are making them so much more sustainable and energy efficient, who's actually getting the benefit of it? And the reality is both the tenant and the landlord, right? So that is a win. This is me answering the question,
And
as even though I'm not the expert, but I love a win-win.
And actually NZ Inc., isn't it? Because it's all about reducing energy and water demands overall.
Well, you said $80 cheaper for your power.
$80 cheaper a month for power, 40% lower demand for water and electricity.
Okay, lots are asking, because you've talked so much about scale and the importance of that, can you see BTR being outside of Auckland and not just in the big city?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on build-to-rent projects from one end of the country to the other, around the Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, Marlborough, Nelson, Queenstown, Dunedin, absolutely. There's demand for it everywhere. It is a case of right-sizing it, of course. You can't go and do 3-level walk-ups in the more provincial centres. Doesn't really fly. And neither can you do standalone homes as build to rent. That doesn't fly from a feasibility point of view. So it is a case of right-sizing it, working with the community and making sure that you're delivering something that people actually want.
You've talked about South Auckland a bit, and so I think this is kind of a neat question actually, which are multi-generational homes that accommodate Pacific ways of living feasible in BTR?
No, to be honest with you. In fact, if you have a look at the demand for housing, how the feasibility works, 1, 2 and 3 bedroom are best. So when you talk about multi-generational homes, you have to be, I think, there's a brutal reality here. New Zealand for the last 50 or 100 years has built a lot of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom homes. There is a shortage of them, but the critical shortage is in 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So the feasibility is tough, although, you know, we have landings with 2 apartments. We have had one Pacifica family rent both, right? So they have 5 bedrooms and, you know, they get to shove the kids in one and mum and dad stay in the other. That's quite cool. But no, I think it's a real challenge. So it's a nice idea, but I think there need to be other solutions for that. That falls into the too hard category at this stage. Sorry about that, folks, but I think it is.
At least you're being honest, which I appreciate.
Yeah, probably adding to that a little bit, and I agree with Sam, it is certainly more difficult. But I guess the way we look at it is for every household that we're bringing into our new developments, we're freeing up space and reducing pressure in the local community. So ultimately, it's all about total supply of new housing and giving people the ability to choose what's right for them, which a lot of people aren't able to at the moment.
Sorry, Paul, I think there's a really important point here. BTR is not social housing. It needs to offer a fair return to our members in order to justify spending the billions that we intend spending on it, right? So it is a huge compliment. I totally agree. Takes the pressure off the social housing demand, but it has to, well, the fancy word now is sustainable. I call it long-term. It has to be a long-term viable, and that means that the economics of it have to stack up.
On that, and it's a good question here as well, is there are currently huge costs for renters to even get in the door, 6 weeks bond, letting fees, etc. What are the costs for entry into your facilities?
For us, it's a month bond, which is pretty standard. That is it.
Wow. Well, it's
there's no lease
not
up
standard,
fee,
quite frankly.
but you know,
because it's
for us,
worse
it's
than
month.
that in most of the private sector, because people have got choices, and so they're just upping all of those sorts of things and putting in extra charges, and it's kind of scary. You know, people, you say renters have got rights. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of them when it comes to actually if you're desperate for a home. Sorry. You
know what, Paula? If you have a relationship of mistrust, you will have 6-week bonds and all that stuff. But if trust is usually rewarded in life, so we're like you. We have the 1 month bond, and you can bring your pets, and you can paint the walls and all that sort of stuff. So it is, and that is. You know, you just have to, if you can have someone living with you long term as a partner, you need to trust them and they need to trust you. And every now and again the trust will get abused. Okay, you deal with that. But that doesn't mean that everyone has to be treated as if they can't be trusted.
Yeah, we can say actually, hand on heart, in 6 years we've had 1 instance of non-standard damage to one of our properties. One of our homes.
Because it feels like a home to people, right? So you treat your home with the respect that you would your own,
Yeah, and if you think you're being ripped off by the landlord, you treat them like they're ripping you off, right? So, you know, it's as simple as that. You know, if you treat someone badly, expect them to behave badly, and they will. Treat them well, and they'll behave well.
Yeah. The only thing, other thing I'd add to that is that what we are finding from the research on build to rent overseas, particularly, is that people do want to have a family, they do want to have community, and so the research we've seen is that if I get to know one person in my build to rent complex, I'm 50% more likely to renew my lease. If I know 2 or more, I'm 90% more likely to renew my lease. Now that's great for them, that's great for us as developers, but what that says is that people don't want to abuse that trust.
No.
Because they actually create a network of friends and family, and that actually does become, just like a street that we all live in, it becomes their street. They don't want to walk away from that. They actually want to be there and be respectful.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes left. Do you want to take your 30-second one. Is there anything that you haven't said that you wish you had? Or anything they should have asked, but they were too lazy and were sleeping?
Paula, can I emphasise just two things?
Yeah.
I think, please, folks, fall in love with BTR. It is going to be a massive game in town. There's a whole lot of money and there's a whole lot of homes to build, and you've all got a vital role to play in that. The second thing is, if I might say, please, could you just fall in love with brick? It's wonderful. Thank you.
Roy, anything you?
Concrete's evil, and we should be building entirely out of timber. We only do timber construction, and in fact, I think we've still got New Zealand's only tall timber residential building down in Queenstown, seven levels. Very proud of that. Very sustainable.
Wouldn't it be boring if we all thought the same?
The only thing for me is just to reiterate that BTR is not social housing. It's actually about giving people choice. It's about giving them a really great lifestyle, and we should be really proud of that. We're at the forefront of doing that. So help us actually just build more stuff and build to rent. Sorry.
Hey, Paula, can I ask the audience a question? If I could offer you an apartment which was lower than the cost of your mortgage, that you could live in forever, and that was built really well, how many would consider doing that? Well, that's worth building an industry on, isn't it?
As long as I can take my dog.
Yeah, and you can have your dog or cats, although cats
dog.
outnumber dogs in our place by 2 to 1. So, yeah.
Well, the husband's margin.
That's an optional.
Hey, I'm going to get the last word in here, and this is not just to our fantastic panellists, but let's give them a big round of applause, and we're going to do that again. I want to give a shout out to them, but also to all of you. You know, there is, for most people, there are 3 things that are most important in their lives, and it goes in this order, and it goes family, home, and job. And for most of you, you're actually working on that second thing, which is their home. And I would argue that you're also, in that case, actually dealing with number 1 as well, because it means that family and friends can be included and they can have that kind of security, whether it is home ownership or whether or not it's something like build to rent. So I know that you all work in such diverse and different areas, but I guess I just sort of sit here and go, you know, thank you for giving a damn. Thank you for working in that area. Thank you for caring about our environment and our sustainability, because it genuinely, the people in this room will make a difference, because this is a small, smart country, and there's a lot of you here. And so taking that day out from my perspective is something I'm really grateful for, and it actually leads me with good heart. So let's go and build some homes. Thank you. Big round of applause for these guys.